Oh yeah, baby, here it is, your #1 most wanted YouTube movie reviewer. Oh, that's not what this is. Awkward. Most Wanted, aka Target #1, dependent upon where you live in the world, is brought to us by Canadian director Daniel Robbie and stars former teen heartthrob Josh Hartnett as real-life Canadian journalist Victor Malark. This is the true story of how in 1989, Victor comes across a story of a young Canadian man who is imprisoned wrongfully in Thailand, and how he tries to get the truth out there and get justice for this young man, Daniel Lager, played wonderfully by Antoine Oliver Pilon. And as he digs deeper into the case, he finds that this isn't just a simple drug-running case, but involves government agencies, officials, and much, much more. Most Wanted is not based on some big, huge international scandal that we've all heard of before. While it does involve a pretty big span, it does more or less just involve a few people. This isn't some big world-ending, government-destroying case. And that's one of the things I really liked about the movie. It doesn't have to be the biggest story in the world. It is about a person's life. And his one life is no less important than 100 lives. And I thought that was a real important theme in the movie. While yes, there's some really fucked up shit that happens, and it is really messed up that this kind of shit does happen to people, regardless of all that, and even though it's not some big front page news story, this is about a person's life, and this man's life is worth it. While the people as a whole may not care as much because it's just one junkie's life, that one junkie has people out there that do care about him, and he is still worth it. Now that being said, there is some really twisty-turny shit that happens in this movie. I mean, the amount of unfortunate events that this guy had to go through is pretty staggering. It's ultimately all these different groups of people's individual ambitions all came together and ended up fucking this one guy over. Now, a point the movie does make, and apparently is how it went down in real life, is that ultimately nobody really cared because at the end of the day, he was a criminal. He was a junkie. But Josh Hartnett's character comes in and says, yeah, okay, this guy's a junkie. He's not a saint. I get that. But who is? Even though he's not a saint, he doesn't deserve this. The guy was sent to Taiwanese prison for 100 years and faced the death penalty. I don't think being a heroin junkie classifies that type of punishment. And I think that that's something the movie does focus on and shows very well. While not a saint, his life is still worth something. It really calls into question how we as a society view criminals regardless of what their crime was. I really liked how the movie was structured as well. A good bit of it is told out of sequence. And while with a story with this many twists and turns that could get confusing, they do a really good job to keep you up to speed throughout the runtime of the movie here. I never felt lost or didn't know what was going on in the moment. And this form of storytelling did help keep the pace up throughout the movie. There are some things that they changed in the movie versus real life for dramatic effect, but I will say that at the end of the movie, they actually acknowledge that, and you don't get that with movies a lot of the time. Not only does it acknowledge it, but it points the finger at some specific things that happened in the movie and says that in real life they were reported a little bit differently, which is their way of pointing out that they believe that there is still corruption within the system. A movie like this can have a great, riveting story, but it will totally ride on its performances. And thankfully, Most Wanted does not disappoint in that department. These are some great performances all around. Josh Hartnett, who is the headliner of the film, does a great job here as Victor Malark. He's an ambitious, driven individual who sometimes neglects other parts of his life that he shouldn't due to the tunnel vision he has for his professional career. And while we've seen that before in other movies, I did like the way that they handled it here better. It's not drawn out into this big, huge thing. Yes, he's neglecting his family for this case, and I get it. In his personal world, his family being neglected and the issues it's causing there is a really big fucking deal. But the purpose of the movie is this case. And I liked how the movie did stay focused on that, but it touched on his personal life as well. But never did that personal life become the movie like we get in some movies like this. They touch on it just enough and give us enough so that we understand what's going on there. But it never detracts from the main story. This is probably Hartnett at his best that I've ever seen though. I've never thought the guy was a terrible actor or anything, and he has shown up in some good roles in the past. But here he shows he's not just a pretty face. He's got some legitimate acting chops. Now while Hartnett does a fantastic job, and he is definitely the headliner of the film, I gotta say that the standout performance here would definitely have to be Antoine Oliver Pilon as Daniel. The vast majority of the movie rides on this character's shoulders. I mean, the movie is about him, and Pilon does a fantastic job here as Daniel. You see and feel the struggles he's going through. He's not a bad guy, but he is caught up in some really bad situations, and he does make some bad decisions. But he's played with a sincerity and innocence by Pilon, which makes you understand and sympathize with this character even more. You really hate seeing this stuff happen to this guy, but he just keeps on getting himself in these really bad situations. I don't know how accurate this performance was to the actual person in real life, but here I really like this person and I wanted him to succeed. One thing about the movie that I really wish we could have seen more of was a bit closer to the end. Without spoiling anything, there is a considerable jump in time closer to the end of the movie, and I do wish I could have seen what happened during that time. We're given a quick rundown of pretty much what was going on so that we more or less understand, but I would have liked to have seen a bit more of that. That struggle, the thing that's going on during that 8-year span, seems like it would have been a really interesting part of the movie. Maybe not, and maybe that's why they had the time jump, but it seems like some really interesting things happened there during that time span. All in all though, I get that it is less about that part of this person's life and more about everything that led up to that part. Either way, I think that there may be an interesting story there. Most Wanted was a really well-made movie with some really poignant questions. Fantastic performances all around, and an interesting little story you've probably never even heard of. And while it may not be based on a huge decade-defining scandal, it is about saving this one man's life and how his life is just as important as anyone else's. And because of that, Most Wanted is absolutely worth a rent.
All he wanted was this.
I have to return some videotape.
This was a really interesting, powerful, well-made story that I hope more people get to see. If nothing else, so that the message that this one man's life is just as valuable as 100. So there it is, guys, my review of Most Wanted. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Bangkok.
If what really happened here reaches the public,
this isn't the first movie where we've seen someone put in a foreign land prison that's pretty much an ultimate fucking hellhole. And I think it's great that these characters in a lot of these movies are able to hold out just long enough so that they can be saved by their family or somebody or the government or whatever. They live in these terrible conditions and are just put through hell, but they stand strong and persevere. That's great for them, man, but if it was me, I wouldn't make it. By the time they got there, I'd be dead.